"Since you couldn't give us an heir, consider this your anniversary gift," my father-in-law said smugly. Inside the box were divorce papers. I looked at my husband. He turned his face away. Then my mother-in-law smiled and introduced a 25-year-old woman as his new wife. Silently, I signed. That's when my best friend pulled an envelope from her purse. The color drained from my father-in-law's face as he read it. I thought it was our anniversary dinner, a celebration of 2 years of love, of building a life together. Instead, it became my public execution, a brutal betrayal orchestrated by the very people I was desperate to call family, with my husband as a silent, pathetic accomplice. But before I tell you about that night, let me take you back to how I got there. The morning of our second anniversary had started with such promise. I woke before dawn, buzzing with an excitement that made sleep impossible. 2 years. Timothy and I had reached this milestone, and tonight we'd celebrate with everyone who mattered. I tiptoed out of bed, not wanting to wake him, and padded to the kitchen in bare feet. The house felt different in those pre-dawn hours, filled with possibility. Sunlight hadn't yet touched our lace curtains, but I could see our wedding photos on the mantel, snapshots of that perfect moment when we promised forever. Timothy's face, radiant with joy as he slipped the ring onto my finger, my dress billowing like a cloud of dreams. I touched my own wedding ring, spinning the warm gold band around my finger as I always did when I needed reassurance. It felt like part of me now. Timothy appeared in the kitchen doorway just as I was plating his favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes, crispy turkey bacon, fresh orange juice. The kitchen smelled like contentment itself. "Happy anniversary," I said softly, expecting his usual kiss. Instead, he just paused, his expression unreadable. "Yes," he replied, flatly. 2 years. Something in his tone made me look up, but he'd already buried his face in the morning newspaper. That familiar rustle of pages filled the space, creating a barrier I couldn't understand. I tried to brush it off as anniversary nerves. Men handled celebrations differently, right? That afternoon, I found myself at Mason and Sharon's house, transforming their formal dining room into the perfect setting. Sharon, my mother-in-law, directed my efforts with her usual mix of criticism and helpful suggestions, but today, she was practically vibrating with excitement. "You seem particularly happy today," I observed, carefully placing roses in the crystal vase she'd given us. "Oh, Catherine," she replied, her smile wider than I'd ever seen it. "Tonight is going to be such a special evening. Such a relief, really. We've been anticipating this moment for quite some time." Mason, my father-in-law, nodded from his leather armchair. 2 years provides adequate time for evaluation, he boomed, that authoritative tone he used for family pronouncements. "Tonight we celebrate making necessary decisions." Their words felt warm, inclusive. I thought they were finally welcoming me into their inner circle after 2 years of desperately seeking their approval, enduring countless subtle criticisms and pointed questions about grandchildren. I smiled, thinking my efforts had finally paid off. As guests arrived, the house filled with laughter, but something was off. Guests offered congratulations that felt hollow, their embraces lasting a moment too long, like goodbyes. Conversations quieted when I approached. My Aunt Patricia pulled me aside, her weathered hands clasping mine tightly. "Catherine, dear, you look pale. Are you feeling well?" she asked, her gaze piercing. "Just excited, I suppose," I mumbled. "Anniversary nerves." She squeezed my hands. "If you ever need anything, Catherine, anything at all, you know you can call me." Her words carried an undertone of warning, an offer of help for problems I didn't even know I had. Before I could ask, Timothy appeared, a forced smile on his face, and guided me away. He maintained a careful physical distance from me all evening, his responses vague when asked about our marriage, as if bracing himself for an unpleasant but necessary task. Dinner proceeded with an eerie, formal elegance. I should have been basking in the success of weeks of planning, but instead, I found myself studying faces around the table, searching for clues. Everyone seemed to be performing rather than celebrating. Then, as dessert was being served, Sharon rose. "We have such a wonderful surprise for you, Catherine," she announced, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. The chocolate mousse sat untouched. I knew, in that gut-wrenching moment, that whatever was coming had been carefully orchestrated for this exact time, this setting, this audience of people I loved and trusted. Mason pushed back his chair, commanding attention. The crystal and china, the flowers I'd arranged with such care, suddenly felt like props. I was not the host of this celebration. I was its target. But this sickening feeling wasn't new. It was the culmination of weeks of hairline cracks in the foundation of my marriage. 3 weeks earlier, I was organizing our tax paperwork when I stumbled upon the first piece of evidence that my perfect marriage was built on lies. Tucked beneath insurance documents, I found a cell phone statement. The letterhead was familiar, our wireless company, but the account number was wrong. My hands shook as I studied the itemized charges, hundreds of text messages and calls to a number I'd never seen. Late-night conversations when Timothy claimed to be sleeping beside me. Afternoon calls during work hours when he supposedly couldn't be reached. Weekend texts exchanged while he sat in our living room, checking work emails. What started as occasional contact had exploded into daily, hours-long communication. Someone in my husband's life had become important enough to warrant this level of attention, this level of secrecy. When Timothy came home, I was waiting, the phone bills spread across the counter like evidence. "Can you explain this?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. His face went through a rapid series of transformations: confusion, recognition, guilt, and then defensive anger. "You went through my personal papers," he accused. "They were mixed in with our tax documents," I shot back. I wasn't snooping, I was organizing. He tried to spin a story about a confidential work line, but it sounded hollow. "Your boss requires you to text at midnight?" His jaw tightened. "You're being paranoid, Catherine. This suspicious behavior is exactly why our marriage has problems." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Our marriage had problems. This was news to me. "What problems, Timothy?" "I don't understand." His voice rose, a frustration building for months finally unleashed. "Everything has to be about you, doesn't it? You question everything I do, everywhere I go, everyone I talk to. It's suffocating." He grabbed his keys. "I need air. I need space. I need to not be interrogated in my own home." The front door slammed, leaving me alone with the phone bill and the crushing realization that my husband was keeping secrets that required professional-level deception. 2 days later, a grocery store encounter added another chilling piece to the puzzle. I was picking up vegetables when I noticed a young woman staring at me. She was beautiful, effortlessly so, making me instantly self-conscious about my own perpetually untamed hair and suddenly frumpy clothes. "You must be Catherine," she said, approaching with obvious nervousness. "I'm sorry, do we know each other?" I asked. "I'm Judith," she replied, her hands trembling. "I work with Timothy. He mentions you sometimes." Timothy rarely discussed colleagues, and certainly never a Judith. Her nervousness felt disproportionate. She kept glancing around, as if expecting to be caught. "He told me about your anniversary party," she continued. "It sounds lovely." This struck me as profoundly odd. Timothy had been reluctant to discuss our celebration, claiming he preferred private moments. Why would he share details with a coworker he'd never mentioned? "How thoughtful of him to talk about our marriage at work," I said carefully, studying her face. Judith's smile faltered. "Oh, he doesn't really discuss your marriage. He talks about other things. Personal things." She paused, realizing she'd said too much. "I should go. It was nice meeting you, Catherine." She hurried away, leaving me in the produce section, questions multiplying in my mind like cancer cells. Personal things? What personal things would Timothy share with a beautiful young coworker that he couldn't discuss with his wife? The weekly dinner at Mason and Sharon's house that Sunday provided another layer of understanding. What had once felt like mild criticism now revealed itself as a systematic evaluation, a performance review I was apparently failing. "Margaret's daughter just had the most beautiful baby," Sharon announced, glancing meaningfully at my flat stomach. "Grandchildren bring such joy." I felt the familiar flush of shame. The Johnsons are expecting their second grandchild. The Pattersons just welcomed their third. Everyone our age is enjoying the fruits of successful marriages. Mason joined the assault. Successful marriages typically produce children within the first year. It demonstrates compatibility, shared values, biological fitness. I tried to redirect the conversation, but Sharon persisted with observations about family legacy. Her words were carefully chosen to wound while maintaining plausible deniability. This wasn't outright cruelty, it was strategic demoralization. Timothy sat through it all in complete silence, neither defending me nor redirecting the conversation. His passive participation in my humiliation was perhaps more devastating than his parents' active cruelty. I excused myself to the bathroom, pressing my back against the door, crying silently while their voices continued in the dining room. Through the thin walls, I heard them discussing my inadequacies as if I were a faulty appliance they were considering replacing. 2 years should have been adequate time, Mason was saying. Perhaps the problem is more fundamental than we initially believed. Sharon replied, "The girl is defective." Timothy's voice was too quiet to distinguish, but his tone suggested agreement, not protest. When I returned, the conversation had shifted, but the damage was done. I understood now that my position in this family was conditional, probationary, subject to performance metrics I was apparently failing to meet. My mother's phone call that Thursday evening, while I stirred soup that Timothy wouldn't be home to eat, brought the worry only a mother can perfectly calibrate. "Catherine, honey, you sounded so tired. Are you sleeping enough? Eating properly?" Timothy missed Easter. Christmas felt strained. "Is everything all right between you two?" The question hung in the air like smoke. How could I explain that my husband was becoming a stranger, that his family treated me like a disappointing employee, that I was discovering evidence of deceptions I couldn't yet understand? "We're fine, Mom," I lied, "just the normal adjustments of married life." Her voice, full of authority from 35 years of marriage, cut through me. "You know you can tell me anything. If you need help, if you need to come home for a while, anything at all." The offer of refuge was both comforting and terrifying. It meant she saw what I was desperately trying to hide. My perfect marriage was crumbling, and I was too proud or too frightened to ask for help. "I'll visit soon," I promised, knowing I was avoiding her perceptive questions. "I love you, sweetheart. Remember that you deserve to be happy." After she hung up, I stood in my empty kitchen, wondering when happiness had become something I had to remember I deserved, rather than something I naturally expected. Now, sitting at this anniversary dinner, with Mason preparing to make his announcement, I realized all those warning signs had been leading to this moment. The mysterious phone calls, the beautiful coworker, the family's growing impatience, my mother's worried questions. All of it had been building towards whatever surprise awaited me. The dessert sat untouched as the weight of expectations I could never meet pressed down like a crushing stone. Mason cleared his throat with the authority of someone accustomed to commanding attention, but before he could begin, my mind drifted to the medical appointment just 48 hours earlier. Erica had insisted on driving me to Dr. Patterson's fertility clinic, her enthusiasm both comforting and overwhelming. The sterile corridors were lined with motivational posters of smiling mothers and chubby babies. The irony wasn't lost on me. I sat there, documenting 2 years of failure. "Just think," Erica whispered in the waiting room, "by Thursday, we might have the answer you've been hoping for." The forms felt like confessions. How many months trying to conceive? 24. Marital stress? Sometimes. I'd stared at that question for a full minute. Dr. Patterson, a kind woman in her 50s, delivered half the babies in our town. "Are you happy in your marriage, Catherine?" she'd asked gently. The question hung like an accusation. Erica squeezed my hand. My hesitation revealed more than any words. Yes, I'd finally replied, but even I could hear the uncertainty in my voice. The blood draw felt like my last hope being extracted through a needle. "The results will be ready by Wednesday," Dr. Patterson had said. Now, at our anniversary dinner, I wondered if those test results might arrive in time to change whatever announcement Mason was preparing. Perhaps positive news could salvage a marriage that felt increasingly precarious. 3 nights after that medical appointment, my illusions about our relationship shattered completely. I found Timothy in our bedroom, armed with fertility treatment brochures and a desperate hope that medical intervention might bridge the growing chasm between us. "Timothy, I've been thinking about what Dr. Patterson said. There are options we haven't explored yet, treatments that might help us conceive." His response was immediate, devastating in its coldness. "Maybe we're not meant to have children together, Catherine. Maybe this is our bodies telling us something we should listen to." The words struck me like physical blows. "What are you saying?" I whispered. "I'm saying that perhaps this marriage was a mistake from the beginning. Perhaps we've been trying to force something that was never meant to work." I stared at this stranger who wore my husband's face. "Is there someone else, Timothy?" His silence stretched between us like a guilty verdict. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat, final. "I think I should sleep in the guest room tonight. We both need space to think about what we really want." That night marked the beginning of a new phase, where we lived as strangers, sharing a house, maintaining appearances while privately acknowledging that something fundamental had broken beyond repair. Despite this growing evidence of betrayal, I'd thrown myself into planning our anniversary with manic determination. The party became my last, desperate attempt to prove my worth, to demonstrate I was valuable enough to keep despite my apparent biological failures. I spent hours selecting flowers, choosing a menu to impress even Sharon, crafting invitations. Each decision felt weighted, as if the party's success might somehow save a marriage clearly beyond salvaging. The irony was suffocating. I was planning a celebration of a relationship that had become a source of daily humiliation, commemorating a union the other parties apparently considered a failure. Yet, I clung to the ritual like a life raft. Every detail felt like evidence in my favor, proof that I was worthy of love despite my inability to conceive. But even as I wrote checks, I knew I was planning my own wake. The party was less about celebrating and more about saying goodbye. Now, as Mason cleared his throat, the storm that had been building all evening finally broke. "Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends," he began, his voice carrying the practiced authority of someone delivering a verdict that had already been decided. "We have gathered tonight not just to mark Catherine and Timothy's 2nd anniversary, but to address some very important family matters." A chill ran down my spine as the room fell silent. Even the soft classical music faded. Mason reached into his jacket pocket with theatrical precision, producing an envelope. He held it high, like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "Marriage," he continued, his gaze settling on me with uncomfortable intensity, "is an institution with specific purposes. When those purposes are not fulfilled after a reasonable period, difficult decisions must be made for the good of all involved parties." My mouth went dry. My dessert fork trembled as I set it down. "Catherine, my dear," Mason said, and his endearment felt like a blade wrapped in silk. "You have been part of our family for exactly 2 years. That represents adequate time to evaluate the success of this union and make necessary adjustments for the future." Timothy stood frozen beside his father, his face pale as parchment, his eyes fixed on some invisible point beyond my shoulder. He looked like a man before a firing squad, except he wasn't the one about to be executed. "Since you could not provide us with an heir," Mason continued, his voice growing stronger with each word, "here, take this anniversary gift." The envelope materialized before me, held steady by Mason's confident hand. Around the table, I heard sharp intakes of breath. My hands shook as I accepted it. The paper felt expensive, substantial, weighted with an importance I was only beginning to understand. The return address was embossed with a law firm's logo. "Open it, Catherine," Sharon urged from across the table, her voice bright with barely contained excitement. "We are also eager to see your reaction." I tore open the seal with fingers that felt disconnected from my body. The legal documents inside were crisp and formal. "Petition for dissolution of marriage," I read aloud, my voice barely a whisper. The formal legal language couldn't disguise the brutal reality. Timothy had met with attorneys. He had filed paperwork. He had planned my abandonment with the same methodical precision other couples used to plan vacations. The room began to spin. Timothy, I looked up at him, desperate for some sign that this was a cruel joke, but he remained frozen. He couldn't even meet my eyes as I held the legal documentation of his betrayal. "There is more, Catherine," Sharon announced, with the enthusiasm of someone unveiling the second act of a performance. "We would like you to meet someone very special." A young woman stepped forward. I recognized her immediately, Judith from the grocery store. Tonight, she wasn't nervous. She was dressed in a blue silk dress, her hair styled perfectly. "Catherine," Sharon continued, barely concealing her glee, "I would like you to meet Judith, Timothy's fiancée. They plan to marry as soon as the divorce is finalized." The words hit me like physical blows. Fiancé. They were already engaged while I was still legally married to him. I looked at Judith now, noticing details I'd missed at the grocery store. She was wearing delicate pearl earrings that suddenly looked familiar, family heirlooms that had been promised to me, now adorning my replacement. "We wanted you to meet her properly," Mason explained, his tone a business transaction, so there would be no confusion about the arrangements. "Judith comes from an excellent family, and she has already proven her ability to conceive." Proven her ability to conceive, the words echoed in my mind. She wasn't just Timothy's mistress. She was his upgrade. "The papers just need your signature, Catherine," Timothy finally spoke, his voice strained. "I have already signed them. We can make this easy for everyone." Easy for everyone, as if there was an easy way to have your marriage dissolved in front of an audience of family and friends. I looked down at the divorce papers, at the line marked with a yellow sticky note. The pen Mason offered me felt impossibly heavy. Around the table, guests shifted, uncomfortable, powerless. "Catherine." Erica's voice cut through the silence. I looked up to see my best friend standing near the living room entrance, her face white with shock and fury. "Don't sign anything." "Not yet." But I was beyond thinking clearly. The humiliation was complete, the betrayal absolute. These people, who'd pretended to care, had systematically orchestrated my destruction, and they were doing it in front of everyone I knew. Through blurring tears, I signed my name on the designated line. The pen scratched across the paper with finality, each letter sealing my fate, ending my marriage in the most public, humiliating way possible. The room erupted in relieved cheers and congratulations for Timothy, as if my pain was the price of admission to their celebration. But the cheers died instantly when Erica stepped forward, her face transformed from shock into something far more dangerous, cold, calculated fury. The excitement I'd noticed in her earlier that day was still there, but now I understood its true nature. She hadn't been excited about celebrating my marriage. She was excited about what she was carrying, and my public humiliation had just given her the perfect moment to deploy it. "Since we are exchanging gifts," Erica announced, her voice slicing through the celebration with surgical precision, "I have one as well." The room's energy shifted. Mason, still basking in the glow of his successful orchestration, looked annoyed. "Erica, dear," Sharon began, her tone patronizing. "How lovely that you want to participate, but I think we've had enough excitement." "Oh, I disagree completely," Erica replied, her smile sharp as a blade. "I think this evening is just getting started." She reached into her purse with deliberate slowness, withdrawing the envelope she'd been protecting all night. But instead of handing it to me, she walked directly to Mason's end of the table. The symbolism was not lost on anyone. She was challenging the patriarch directly, meeting power with power. "This envelope contains information that I believe will interest you greatly," Erica said, holding the document just out of Mason's reach. Information about your daughter-in-law that might have influenced your decision-making tonight. Had you bothered to gather all the facts before proceeding with this performance? Mason's confidence faltered for the first time. Young lady, I don't know what game you think you are playing, but no game, Erica interrupted, her voice growing stronger. Just truth. Something that seems to be in short supply in this family. She placed the envelope on the table directly in front of Mason, her movements deliberate and controlled. Open it. The room held its collective breath. Mason reached for the envelope, his hands no longer steady. His theatrical confidence was cracking. He tore open the seal and withdrew a single sheet of paper. I watched his face as he read, witnessing a transformation that was both terrible and satisfying. The color drained from his cheeks. His triumphant smile dissolved like sugar in rain, replaced by an expression of dawning horror. What does it say? Sharon demanded, her voice sharp with anxiety. Mason's hands began to tremble, the paper rustling like autumn leaves. His eyes darted between the medical report and my tear-streaked face, struggling to process the magnitude of what he had just done. It's a pregnancy test, he whispered, the words barely audible above the suddenly oppressive silence. Catherine is pregnant. The silence that followed was deafening. Not expectant, but the hollow silence of a tomb. Guests celebrating moments before now stared in shock as the implications sank in. Positive, Erica clarified, her voice carrying clearly through the stunned quiet. Confirmed by blood test 48 hours ago. Catherine is carrying your grandchild, Mason. The heir you claimed she could never provide. I found my voice then, drawing strength from somewhere deep inside me I hadn't known existed. Through my tears and heartbreak, I summoned every ounce of dignity I had left. Congratulations, I said, looking directly at Mason, my eyes no longer holding submission. You just gave away your grandchild. The power shift in the room was immediate and complete. Mason, who had commanded the evening, now looked like a man facing his own execution. The signed divorce papers, his victory moments before, now became evidence of his devastating miscalculation. Catherine, he stammered, his voice breaking. Catherine, we didn't know. We had no idea. Surely we can. Can what? I asked, my voice growing stronger. Can undo the papers I just signed in front of 45 witnesses? Can pretend this evening never happened? Can take back the humiliation you orchestrated for your own entertainment? Timothy finally found his voice, stepping forward, his hands outstretched in a pleading, pathetic gesture. Catherine, please, we can work this out. The papers don't have to be filed. We can tear them up right now. Work what out, Timothy? I asked, the irony so sharp it was almost funny. Work out our marriage that you have already legally dissolved? Work out your relationship with Judith, who is wearing your grandmother's earrings and planning to move into our house. Judith, who had been standing beside Sharon like a trophy, now looked like she wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. Her triumph had evaporated, replaced by the uncomfortable realization that she had participated in the destruction of a pregnant woman's marriage. This is all a misunderstanding. Sharon interjected, her voice rising with desperate pitch. An unfortunate timing issue. We can make this right. We can. You can what? Erica interrupted, her fury now fully unleashed. You can undo the legal documents? You can erase the public humiliation? You can magically transform the celebration back into what Catherine thought it was. Mason was openly begging now, his arrogance completely gone. Catherine, please. You must understand. We thought we were doing what was best for everyone. You thought. Wrong, I said simply. You thought you could dispose of me like defective merchandise and replace me with a newer model. You thought you could orchestrate my humiliation for your entertainment. You thought you could destroy my life without consequences. The legal reality of the signed documents was sinking in around the room. Even if I wanted to forgive this betrayal, to attempt reconciliation, the divorce papers created a legal barrier that couldn't simply be wished away. The wheels of dissolution were already in motion, set in stone by signatures and witnesses. The papers are signed, I continued, my voice steady despite the tears. The marriage is over, and your grandchild will never know the family that threw him away before he was even born. The celebration that had begun with such cruel joy was now awake, mourning the death of relationships and possibilities that could never be resurrected. The silence that followed my declaration stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. Erica appeared at my side, her arm sliding through mine with protective determination. Come on, she whispered, gentle but firm. We're leaving. Please, Timothy, he called out as I pushed back my chair, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor. We can fix this. We can make this right. I turned to look at him one last time, this man who had shared my bed and my dreams. His face was pale with panic, his hands reaching towards me in a gesture that was 2 years too late. Fix what, Timothy? I asked, my voice steady. Fix the legal documents I signed in front of everyone we know? Fix the humiliation you orchestrated? Fix the fact that you replaced me before you even divorced me? He had no answer. None of them did. Catherine, you have to understand. Mason stumbled to his feet. We made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But we can correct this. The papers don't have to be filed. And then what? I asked, my voice growing stronger. Pretend this evening never happened? Pretend you didn't just publicly humiliate me for the entertainment of our family and friends? Pretend Judith isn't standing there wearing your mother's jewelry and planning to move into my house. Sharon stepped forward, her face flushed. Catherine, dear, you must be reasonable. Families have misunderstandings. This can all be worked out. Think about the baby. Think about what is best for your child. The audacity of her words stopped me cold. What is best for my child, I repeated slowly, is to never know the family that threw him away before he was even born. With Erica's steadying presence, I walked toward the dining room exit, leaving behind the crystal and china and carefully arranged flowers that had once represented my hopes for acceptance. My steps were measured and deliberate, each one carrying me further away from the life I had thought I wanted. Catherine. Mason's voice cracked. You cannot do this. You cannot take our grandchild away from us. I paused at the threshold, turning back one final time. I am not taking your grandchild away from you, I said clearly. You gave him away when you handed me those divorce papers. The arguing voices and desperate pleading followed us through the front hallway, growing fainter with each step towards the door. The cool night air hit my face like a blessing as Erica and I stepped onto the front porch. After the suffocating atmosphere of betrayal and cruelty inside, the October evening felt clean and purifying. I breathed deeply, filling my lungs with air that didn't carry the weight of disappointment and judgment. Don't look back, Erica whispered, guiding me toward her car. Don't give them the satisfaction of seeing you hesitate. I kept my eyes fixed forward. With each step away from that house, I felt something lifting from my shoulders, a weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to walk without it. Behind us, the front door opened and Timothy's voice carried across the yard. Catherine, please don't do this. But I was already climbing into Erica's passenger seat, already closing the door on that chapter of my life with a firm click that felt more final than any divorce papers could. Erica started the engine and pulled away. In the safety of her car, surrounded by the familiar scent of her vanilla perfume and soft jazz, I finally allowed myself to completely fall apart. The sobs came from somewhere deep inside, the kind that involve your entire body, leaving you gasping for breath between waves of grief. 2 years of marriage. 2 years of trying to earn approval that was never going to come. 2 years of believing I was building something permanent with someone who was secretly planning my replacement. Let it out, Erica said softly, squeezing my hand. You've been holding this in for months. She was right. The relief of finally releasing all that suppressed pain was almost as overwhelming as the pain itself. I can't believe they did that to you, Erica said, her voice shaking with fury. I can't believe they planned that whole performance. It was cruel beyond anything I could have imagined. Through my tears, I managed to speak. You saved me, Erica. If you hadn't been there with those test results, if you hadn't stood up to them, you would have found another way, she replied firmly. You're stronger than they ever gave you credit for. Stronger than you gave yourself credit for. As we drove through our quiet suburban neighborhood, past houses where lights glowed warmly, I began to feel something unexpected stirring alongside my grief. Relief, pure and simple. The marriage that had been slowly suffocating me was over. The constant pressure to earn approval was finished. The pretense that we were building something beautiful could finally be abandoned. Where do you want to go? Erica asked, as we approached the intersection that would take us either to my house or hers. Home, I said without hesitation. I want to go home. The house that Timothy and I had shared looked different as Erica pulled into the driveway. The porch light I had left burning cast familiar shadows, but something fundamental had shifted. This was no longer the home I shared with my husband. This was simply my house, the place where I would raise my child and build whatever came next. Erica helped me carry my overnight bag inside, her presence filling the silence that had once felt oppressive, but now seemed peaceful. As I moved through rooms that contained 2 years of shared memories with Timothy, I realized the house no longer felt like a shrine to a failed marriage. It felt like the beginning of something entirely new. I should call my mother, I said, settling onto the couch. Erica nodded, squeezing my shoulder before heading to the kitchen. I'll make us some tea while you talk to her. Take your time. Despite the late hour, my mother answered on the second ring, her voice immediately alert. Catherine, sweetheart, it's nearly midnight. Is everything all right? The question opened a floodgate of words. I told her everything. The phone bills, Judith, the cruel family dinners, and finally, the devastating anniversary party that had ended with divorce papers and pregnancy test results creating chaos in equal measure. Oh, my dear child, my mother whispered when I finished, her voice thick with emotion. I knew something was wrong, but I never imagined they would treat you with such calculated cruelty. Her validation felt like medicine for wounds I hadn't known how to treat. Mom, I'm pregnant. The baby they said I could never. Give them is growing inside me right now. The joy in her voice was immediate and uncomplicated. Catherine, that is wonderful news. You are going to be a magnificent mother. That child is so lucky to have you. Her enthusiasm stood in stark contrast to the conditional acceptance I'd grown accustomed to. My mother's love for her future grandchild required no performance metrics. It simply existed, pure and unconditional. I want to come stay with you for a while, she continued. Help you get settled, prepare for the baby. You shouldn't have to go through this alone. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely excited about the future. I would love that, Mom. I really would. The months that followed my mother's arrival were unlike anything I'd experienced during my marriage. Freed from the constant stress of trying to earn approval, my body responded to pregnancy with remarkable resilience. Dr. Patterson commented at each appointment how much healthier and more relaxed I appeared. Whatever changes you have made in your life, she said during my 5-month checkup, they are working beautifully. You just look radiant. The pregnancy became a celebration rather than a source of anxiety. Erica organized a baby shower that filled my living room with genuine friends. My mother painted the nursery in soft yellow and green, creating a sanctuary that felt warm and welcoming. When Timothy attempted to contact me, my lawyer made it clear the divorce proceedings would continue as planned. He had no legal claim to involvement in my pregnancy. The signed papers from that devastating evening now served as an ironclad barrier, protecting both me and my child. Labor began on a Tuesday morning in late spring, nearly 8 months after the anniversary party that had changed everything. Erica and my mother flanked my hospital bed, offering encouragement and support. The delivery room filled with love and anticipation, love freely given. When my son finally arrived, healthy, beautiful, and perfect, I felt a completeness that had never existed during my marriage. Holding him for the first time, I understood what unconditional love felt like. He is gorgeous, Erica whispered, tears streaming down her face as she looked at the baby I had named David Erica Miller. Absolutely perfect. The middle name honored the friendship that had saved me during my darkest hour, ensuring my son would always carry a reminder of what true loyalty looked like. David would grow up knowing that the most important relationships in life were chosen rather than assigned by biology or marriage certificates. The hospital room filled with flowers and gifts from people who celebrated his arrival without reservation. None of them questioned his worth based on bloodlines or family heritage. They simply welcomed a new life into the world with joy. Timothy and his family made no attempt to contact me after David's birth, apparently understanding that the bridge between us had been permanently burned. The legal documents that had once represented my humiliation now served as protection, ensuring my son would never be subjected to the conditional love and constant evaluation that had made my own life with them so miserable. As David grew from infant to toddler, our small house became a sanctuary of laughter, chaos, and unconditional acceptance. Erica served as his honorary aunt, spoiling him with attention. My mother extended her visit indefinitely, claiming she'd never been happier than when she was helping raise her grandson. The 3 women who had once been excluded from Timothy's family's vision of the future created something infinitely more valuable, a chosen family built on love rather than obligation, support rather than judgment, acceptance rather than performance metrics. Now, years later, I sit in my backyard garden, watching David chase butterflies with the fearless enthusiasm of a 4-year-old who has never known rejection. His laughter fills the air as he discovers new flowers and interesting insects, his world expanding each day in an environment where curiosity is celebrated. The pain of betrayal has faded into something unexpected, gratitude. Timothy and his family's cruelty had inadvertently given me the greatest gift possible. They had forced me to discover my own strength, to build a support system based on genuine care, to raise my child without the toxic pressures that had nearly destroyed my own sense of worth. David knows nothing of the grandparents who rejected him before birth. He knows only the love of his mother, his chosen grandmother who reads him stories every night, and his honorary aunt who brings him new books and toys with delightful regularity. His foundation is built on acceptance rather than conditions, celebration rather than evaluation. The revenge I achieved was not calculated or vindictive. It was simply the natural consequence of living well, of choosing love over obligation, of raising a child who would never question his worth based on other people's approval. Timothy's family had wanted an heir to carry on their legacy. Instead, they had created the beginning of mine, a legacy built on kindness, acceptance, and the radical idea that love should never require additions. Watching David play in our garden, I realized that their cruelty had set me free to become the person I was always meant to be. The best revenge, as it turned out, was simply living well.